Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So by the title of this video, you can tell that this is going to be my January wrap up, and it's really crazy that I'm filming this video right now, but January did take a long time to come to an end, which it always does. So at least we made it to February, right? We're here. But I'm actually going to switch this video up a bit differently. The way I normally go about these videos is that I go in order from the book that I read like first in the month to second, third, fourth, etc., and give you my reviews that way. But I wanted to switch it up. I'm going to start off with like the lowest rated books and work my way up to the 5 stars of the month. So that's how we're going to do it here, and we're going to see how this goes, and who knows, maybe I'll start to do this for more of my videos. I don't know, but I wanted to try it out this time. So we do have quite a few books to get through, so let's get started. Okay, so my lowest rated book this month was a 3.5 star, which really isn't that bad or that low to be honest, but it was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. Yes, I finally read this infamous book, and I have a lot of thoughts. So this is about a young woman, and you never get to learn their name, but this does follow a young woman who lives in New York City during the years of I think 2000 and 2001, and she's pretty like well off. She actually has a lot in her savings. So because she has a lot in her savings, she decides to take a year off to sleep because she is very depressed and very unhappy with life and how things are going, and she just wants to sleep. She doesn't want to work, she doesn't really want to go outside and interact with people, she really just wants to sleep. And that is pretty much the story. There are just a lot of different like discussions that can be had here because this book does focus on depression, of course. This does also focus on heavy substance abuse, like heavy, so please look up trigger warnings for this book. But I will say that this book was a dark, comical, and unhinged fever dream, to be honest. I did enjoy it, even though I rated it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's almost a 4, so I did enjoy it, but there were some things in here, of course, that threw me off. I was a little bit confused with certain parts of the story, and I think that was the point because this does follow a woman who, again, is depressed, but she's also pretty confused herself and kind of just has like a stream of consciousness throughout this entire story. So that's really what you're getting out of this, I feel like. But either way, I did oddly enjoy this. I liked how Ottessa Moshfegh explored the complexities of depression and how it affects everyone differently, and how people do use sleep as a form of coping and a form of treatment. Like I did mention, there are themes of substance abuse in here, so our MC does dip and dabble into that, but she does try to sleep a lot of her pain away. And yeah, like I said, I did enjoy this one, but it was weird. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I am really interested in reading more by Ottessa Moshfegh because I actually really liked her writing style in this, and the story did keep me engaged and kept me, you know, interested. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it just wasn't a perfect story for me, but I do like to think that I understood what she was trying to do with this story. So yeah, if you haven't read this one yet, or if you haven't read anything by Ottessa Moshfegh, I would just look up trigger warnings, but I would recommend picking up something by her because I think she has a unique writing style. And I was actually talking to EKG on here, and her and I were talking for a little bit in her comments, and she said that Ottessa Moshfegh has a very distinct voice, and I agree with her 100%. She really does. So I will be picking up more books by her. I think I'm going to read Eileen next, and then she has another book. I think it's a collection of short stories. It's called Homesick for Another World, so I do want to give that one a try. But yeah, this book, really weird, really intense, but I oddly enjoyed it. Also, the ending really upset me. Justice for Rena, that is all I will say. So moving on to my 4-star reads for the month. Now, this book I'm about to show you guys, I actually read this for Kayla's Buzzwordathon reading challenge, and it is Men Who Hate Women, From Incels to Pickup Artists, The Truth About Extreme Misogyny and How It Affects Us All by Laura Bates. So this book was a wild ride. I will just say that you guys can see right here that I tabbed this book up like crazy. I was not playing games. There are so many different talking points and discussions that can be had about this book that I had to tab it up because I know I'm going to want to reference some of these things that I learned later on. But this book is essentially just a collection of different topics and elements that go into extreme misogyny and how it affects us all. So Laura Bates is the founder of the Everyday Sexism Project, and I think that is a nonprofit organization that tries to educate as well as combat violence against women, sexism, misogyny, etc. So this book is really interesting because Laura Bates actually took a deep dive into the internet, specifically the cell community, and she found the most horrifying and vile and hateful post anybody could think up and included them in this book so that way she could really hit her point home of how extreme misogyny is very dangerous and how it affects not only women but it also affects men. And there is a specific chapter in here that is called Men Who Prey on Women, and it is about the booming pickup artist industry. And Laura Bates talks about how this industry encourage and enable men to harass women and even potentially assault them through these pickup artist workshops and training sessions, etc. It was really crazy. It was really wild. I did not know any of this, so this was really eye-opening for me. It literally changed my outlook on this entire world, to be honest. Now, I obviously knew that misogyny and sexism were huge issues, of course, but this book really opened my eyes to just other worlds that are beyond, I feel like, our scope of thinking when it comes to sexism and misogyny. So I did rate this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I will get into why more specifically, but I will say that this is a very important read. It is very daunting, it is very emotionally taxing, and it is very, very triggering. You have to have thick skin to read this book because there are hateful posts in here about women. So if you are a woman reading this, you are going to be very disgusted and horrified by a lot of the shit that's in here. I can't imagine how Laura Bates's psyche and mental health was after going through this experiment, because holy shit, I don't know if I could have been able to do it, guys. I really don't think I would be able to, but shout out to her for doing that type of work and getting into the nitty-gritty of this toxic cesspool that is this. So you have a lot of thoughts on this book, but I really don't want to get into all of them just because I think that everyone should just pick this book up for themselves. But I really like the discussions that Laura Bates proposed in here. She talks about how extreme misogyny should be viewed as domestic terrorism, because it really is that, like, because it's extremist, you know? So it really should be recognized as such by society, by the FBI, so that way violence against women and femicide can actually be taken seriously and destroyed one day. But she just had so many good talking points in here. That's really all I can say. I just really want you guys to pick this book up if you can handle it. I don't want to get into all of the details, but just know that this was very hard-hitting and it was really depressing. Getting into why I rated this 4 stars, I feel like this book only scratched the surface when it comes to how misogyny affects other women, so specifically marginalized women. Misogynoir is a real thing that affects Black women on a daily basis, and it of course is the intersection of misogyny and race. So Black women face certain levels and degrees of misogyny that other groups don't experience because we have the double whammy of being Black and being a woman. So I would have liked if Laura Bates would have sat down with Black feminists and really like include those type of statistics and talking points and statements and quotes in this book, so that way the reader could have got a full scope of how misogyny does have like branches and levels and layers to it, you know? I really would have liked if she would have did more on that and expanded more on that front. That was the only thing that really bothered me about this book. I felt like it really only scratched the surface and it didn't really account for other marginalized groups as much as it should have. But I still think that this is a very important read and this still affects all of us regardless. And another thing that I really wanted to say about this book is that it really, like I said, depressed me and put me into a deep and dark headspace, because reading some of the solutions that Laura Bates proposes when it comes to destroying femicide and violence against women would work in a perfect world, in a utopia, but because we know how this world is already set up, it's never going to happen. Laura Bates pretty much tells us that the people that are benefiting from the patriarchy are the ones that have to destroy it. And why would anyone that's benefiting from something want to destroy it, you know? So this really was I feel like a bucket of cold water that was thrown into my face to really show me that no matter what, these issues are always going to exist and they're always going to be a thing. And it really just served as a reminder of like, we just gotta stay safe, we just gotta stay vigilant and just educate as much as we can and just hope for the best. That's really, and have open discussions and open talks with men and women about this serious issue. That's really all that I feel like we can do. Laura Bates's solutions are really good, and again, I really think that in a perfect world, if they were to be applied, I think misogyny and extremism when it comes to misogyny and femicide and the patriarchy and sexism could be destroyed. But because we don't live in a perfect world, I just don't personally think that it will happen. So this book definitely gave me a lot to think about, and it really did make me feel a little bit hopeless and a little bit devastated, but I still think that this is an important read nonetheless. So if you are interested in this book and if you can handle the many triggers, please pick it up. Seriously, like, this opened up my eyes to so much that I just did not know existed on the internet and beyond. The next book that I have here is a thriller, and it was a very interesting one, I will say that, and it is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. So this was a January book of the month pick, and I never read anything by Rachel Hawkins before, but this was an interesting introduction into her work. So this actually follows a young woman named Lux who is very down on her luck, and she doesn't really know what to do next in life. She is currently living and working in Hawaii, and she's just trying to make ends meet until she can figure out her next move. But she does encounter this young man named Nico, Nico, and they hit it off very quickly. They become very infatuated with each other, and they enter this whirlwind romance relationship. And Lux always had dreams of sailing the world and just traveling, and Nico also tells Lux that he has those same dreams. So they decide that they want to, you know, sail one day. But before they can do that, they encounter these two women named Brittany and Amma, who ask Nico and Lux, can they sail them to this remote island called Moreau Island. And Moreau has a lot of spooky and crazy things that happen on the island, and this is all in the synopsis, but there was a shipwreck back in the 1800s, and there were, I think, about 30 men on the ship, and the ship crashed. But most of these men survived, and they actually ended up retreating to the island and waited for rescue. But as they realized that rescue was not going to come anytime soon, they started to get hungry, and there were cannibalist acts that happened, and the remaining men were finally rescued and tried for their crimes of cannibalism. So this island has a lot of spooky and possibly paranormal things wrapped up into it, as well as just very sinister, unexplainable things, right? So Nico and Lux are a little bit hesitant at first, but they decide to finally, you know, agree and sail Brittany and Amma to this island, and the story pretty much derails from there. I don't want to give anything else away because this is very short, and y'all just need to read this. Y'all just need to read this. It is very campy, it is very fun, and to me very addictive, and I was like turning the pages so quickly. I finished this in about like I think I finished this in one sitting. It was that fun for me. So I did rate this a 4 out of 5 stars just because the ending did throw me off a bit, and it was very vague and open-ended, and usually I don't mind those type of endings, but for this one I just would have liked it to be wrapped up a little bit better. But it's fine, it was still fun for the most part. I would describe this book as a Love Island season from hell. So if you were interested in Love Island, if you're interested in the bling ring, as well as maybe, I don't want to say the word, but I'll leave it up on the screen here. If you're interested in that movie, in that book, as well as just Lord of the Flies, I think you will like this book because it is literally all of that wrapped up in here. This was so entertaining and so much fun. I'm starting to realize that I really like one-by-one vibes and like whodunit books, because I read Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina last month, and I thought that was fun. It was camp. Like the girls that get it, and the girls that don't. And I feel like that is the situation with this book. This is really polarizing. I've seen a lot of people hate this book on Bookstagram, like they cannot stand this book, but I've seen a lot of people really enjoyed it, like myself. So yeah, definitely look up the synopsis if you want to learn a little bit more, but I do recommend picking up this book and just giving it a try because it was fun. The last 4-star book that I have here, you guys are gonna be really surprised about because I was talking about this book a lot in my other videos, and it is Confessions by Kane Minato. So I thought that this was going to be a 5-star book. I even made a 5-star predictions video where I mentioned that this book was going to be 5 stars. And when I finished it, I originally was going to rate it 5 stars, but after I started to sit on it for a couple more days, I realized that this was more of a 4-star for me. So this story actually follows a young woman who is a teacher at this middle school, and she had a 4-year-old daughter, but unfortunately her 4-year-old daughter was murdered by 2 of the students in her classroom, and she decides to enact her plan of revenge on them as well as the entire class. And so you follow this maniacal plot of revenge from page 1 all the way into the end, and I will say that it is a wild ride. So before I get into why I rated this a 4-star and not a 5-star, I will just say right off the bat that I really enjoyed this story. I thought this was such an interesting and really like odd novel, and I've never read anything like this before, and this is why I always go up for translated reads, especially translated thrillers, because there are just so many unique takes on a thriller and on horror, you know, from other parts of the world. So I love them. I love them so much. So I really appreciated that book for that alone. But there were certain things in here that I just was not expecting. A lot of twists and turns. If you hear people say that this book has so many twists and turns that you won't see coming, believe them, because there were so many things in here that I just did not think were going to play out, and they did. I will say that a lot of people in here that this story follows, a lot of them were just a pawn in this very sinister, wicked, sick game of chess. But it all came together in the end. Another thing about this book is that you find out more and more about each character or about the story and about the plot as the chapters go on. So you are pretty confused a little bit in the beginning because you're like, okay, well, who did it? Who committed these crimes, etc., etc. But as the chapters go on, you start to kind of collect like puzzle pieces essentially, and once you get to the end, the entire puzzle comes together. So this book was really fascinating to me. I will not look at a carton of milk the same way again. That is all I will say on that. If you read this book, you know. If you know, you know. So yeah, I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars just because the ending fell a little bit flat for me, just a little bit. There was a really crazy twist in here in the very beginning of the book, and I thought that the way that that was like handled was very sick, very disgusting, and very twisted, but it was like brilliant, like evilly brilliant, if that makes sense, like an evil genius type of situation. So I really liked that because it really raised the stakes and really raised the anxiety and the dread and the fear that you felt reading this book while you were getting closer and closer to the end. But once we got to the end, we figured out that that major twist was not what we thought it was, and so it kind of just disappointed me a little bit. And I know this sounds so sick because if you read this book, you know what I'm talking about, so I sound a little bit like but it just, I don't know, like that part of the story really did something different to the story for me. It really elevated it in a very strange way that worked. So when we found out that it wasn't what we thought, I felt like it kind of lost the magic for me a little bit. Now I will say that I did enjoy the way that the killers were handled in the story, like in terms of the ending. I will say that I did like that part of it, but yeah, I just felt like the twist that was, you know, in the beginning of the book, I just felt like that could have been handled, I don't know, a little bit differently. So yeah, either way, this book was still really fun. It was still really entertaining, and I will be thinking about this one for a long time, especially that milk carton situation. If you know, you know. But yeah, I definitely recommend picking this up and giving it a try regardless, because you really might end up liking it. I also heard that this is a film, so I will be giving this a try and seeing if the film is very close to the book. Who knows? And now moving on to my 5-star books of the month. So this is the second to last book, and it is The Night Stalker, The Life and Crimes of Richard Ramirez by Philip Carlo. So as you guys can hopefully see, I did tab this book up just a little bit. I tabbed it up mostly in the trial portion, but this is a, I guess, biography slash a true crime nonfiction book about the notorious serial killer Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, aka the Valley Intruder. And for those of you who do not know, Richard Ramirez was an infamous serial killer that terrorized California in the summer of 1985. He murdered a lot of people and also left behind survivors. This book was a lot. This was a lot. I'm not going to get into the full detail because it is, you know, a true crime book, so I definitely recommend picking it up if you want to learn more about this man as well as just what is in this book. But I will say that this book was very disturbing, very chilling, very depraved, but Philip Carlo did such a phenomenal job at really painting a portrait of a cold-blooded killer, as it says right here on the cover. He spent so much time collecting so much evidence and so much information that had to deal with Richard Ramirez and his crimes. He actually even sat down and interviewed Richard Ramirez when he was finally sentenced to, I think, death. When he was convicted, and he actually sat down with Richard Ramirez and had an interview with him and spoke to him, and it was the most chilling thing that I've ever read in my life. It was so chilling, you guys. I'm not going to read, you know, everything that he said, but Philip Carlo actually asked Richard Ramirez, how does one avoid becoming a victim of a serial killer? And Richard Ramirez gave his response and essentially said something along the lines of like, you really can't. Once a serial killer decides that you are their victim, you are their victim. And when I tell you guys I got goosebumps after I read that, I was shook. So yeah, this book was really difficult to get through. There is a lot of gruesome and grotesque and vile things mentioned in here. Part 1, this book is broken up into parts, and part 1 documents Ramirez's crimes in brutal detail, and Philip Carlo does not hold back. He really shows you the brutality and the severity of Richard Ramirez's crimes because he wants you to understand how sick and twisted and disturbing that this man truly was. So I really did not like that section for obvious reasons, but it was still really interesting to read about because I watched the Night Stalker documentary on Netflix. And that documentary was actually inspired by this book because this came out, I think, in 1996 or something like that. So this book has been out for a long time. So this book was just as intense as the documentary, but the documentary left out so much, and I understand that because it was a documentary, you know. But Philip Carlo goes into really gruesome, brutal detail about his crimes and really lets the reader know how scary this man was. He was truly the real-life boogeyman. And because I'm into true crime and because I really look into this type of stuff on a daily basis, I've always said that Richard Ramirez terrified me to my core the most when it comes to serial killers. He was in a class of his own, to be honest. The crimes that he committed, the terror that he got from other people that he thrived off of was like no other. I've never seen anything like this before. So yeah, Philip Carlo did a really phenomenal job really outlining all of that. And I also really like the section that talks about Richard Ramirez's life and how he became the real life boogeyman and the killer that we know him as today. It was really eye-opening, and a lot of the stuff that Philip Carlo goes into detail about, it makes sense as to why he turned out the way that he did rough childhood. He also had severe head injuries as well, like multiple head injuries throughout his childhood. So yeah, it was a lot. And that is all I will say about this book. If you can handle the intense trigger warnings in this book, I definitely recommend picking it up. But if you cannot, please do not read this. This is not for the faint of heart. I was so scared to go to sleep after I read certain chapters. I was also terrified to just even leave my house after certain chapters. Terrified to even be in the dark after I read part 1 because of how scary and meticulous and calculated he was as a killer, and how he was able to break into people's houses throughout the night. Like, it was just intense, guys. So yeah, I can't say enough great things about this, and I don't want to sit here and say that like I enjoyed this book because of the content. Obviously not. These were real life victims and survivors, but I just really enjoyed and appreciate the way that Philip Carlo narrated the story essentially, and how he written the story, because I feel like this is very accessible for someone that is pretty intimidated by like biographies and stuff to read. It was very easy to read in my opinion in terms of just like the writing style, but the content itself is very difficult and very disturbing. So please look up trigger warnings. Do not go into this not knowing anything, because there's a lot going on in here that will make anybody scream and become uncomfortable. So yeah, 5 stars, but very difficult book. I also forgot to mention this other 5-star book that I had, so I'm so sorry about that. But another 5-star book that I read for the month of January was You Reach Sam by Dustin Tao. So y'all, I'm not gonna get into this book or my thoughts on this. I actually do have a reading vlog for this in the queue, and it will be uploaded before I upload this video. So I will leave the reading vlog for this linked up in the cards above or in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. But I will say that this book was an easy 5 stars. It was heartbreaking, it was beautiful, it was stunning, it was reflective, and I love this book. It means everything to me now. So that is all I will say. Stay tuned for my reading vlog and learn more about my thoughts in depth. Ending on a more positive note, the last 5-star book that I have here is a romance, and it is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. Guys, I love this book with everything in me. So this is about a young woman named Danica Brown, who is a PhD student, as well as I think like a teacher. Yeah, she's also a teacher, but she teaches at this college, and she is really good friends with the security guard named Zafir, and they pretty much talk every morning whenever she enters the building. She always gives him a cup of coffee. He always gives her a granola bar, and they're, you know, pretty good work acquaintances, I should say. Maybe not friends, but they're good work colleagues. One day there is a fire drill that takes place, and Danny is like the last one to get out of the building because it's Danny. And so she tries to go to the elevator to, you know, get down to the main floor, and because this is a fire drill, the elevator stopped working. And so Danny is trapped in this elevator, and Zafir comes to her rescue, saves her, and someone records them coming out of the school because Zafir is like carrying Danny outside because she, I think, is a little bit injured. So they are recorded by somebody, and this video of them goes viral, and now they have to enter this fake dating situation because they have went viral and they're starting to reap the benefits of going viral. So Zafir runs this nonprofit for children, and so he really wants to get more exposure for it, so that's why he wants to do this fake dating situation. And Danny just wants to help Zafir because he's trying to help the kids. So why would you not want to help someone who's trying to help kids? So you follow them on this journey of fake dating, and the story pretty much takes off from there. This was such an enjoyable story. I of course rated this 5 stars. I loved everything about this. I loved both characters, but starting with Danny, she was so funny. Y'all, when I tell you guys I snorted and laughed out loud at 90% of the things that she said, she was hilarious. Talia Hibbert knows how to write witty characters, and I really appreciate her for that because Danny had me in tears throughout this entire story. She was also very, very smart. I'm starting to realize that I love books that focus on people in PhD programs or in college settings. It's fun to read about, you know, PhD programs and what goes into that and how difficult and draining it can be. I did read The Love Hypothesis last year, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. So I knew once I figured out that this had a PhD student, I knew I was going to eat it up, and I did. And I also really liked how self-aware Danny was. She had a lot of issues when it came to commitment and love, and she recognized that. She recognized it, and she knew that, you know, she had a lot of character flaws, and she was trying her best. She was trying her best, and that's all that we can hope for and all that we can do as human beings. So I really loved her character deeply. And then moving on to Zafir, I don't play into the whole book boyfriend thing, but y'all, I will say that Zafir is a great book boyfriend. Like, he was everything. I love the whole I hate everyone but her trope, and that is exactly what Zafir gave. He could not stand anybody except for his family and friends and Danny, and especially Danny. He went above and beyond for her. He was such a cinnamon roll when it came to her. He would do anything. when it came to Danny and her needs, and I just love that about him. He was a hopeless romantic like myself, so he was trying to figure out what women really wanted out of a relationship and how to have a healthy, successful relationship, and I just love that. I loved that whole take on a hopeless romantic. I think it's so interesting when, you know, male characters are the hopeless romantics, because it gives us a different perspective from, you know, the usual status quo of the woman being the hopeless romantic. So I really enjoyed that aspect. He listened to romance audiobooks and I just thought that was so funny. But yeah, these two, great chemistry all the way around. The steam in here, y'all, oof, it was good. It was good. The smut here was really good. That's really all I have to say on Take a Hint, Danny Brown. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with the trilogy. I have not read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, or Actor A.G. Brown. I don't really know if I'm interested still in reading those two books. I got a glimpse into their characters in this story, and I don't know, I'm just not really like interested in reading those two. I feel so bad, but I'm just really not interested in reading them. So yeah, for now I think I'm just gonna stick with Take a Hint, Danny Brown, but I'm really happy that I enjoyed this one. All right, y'all, and those are all of the books that I read for January. I had a very successful reading month. I only had one low rated book that wasn't even really low to me because I still enjoyed it, but like I couldn't give it more than what I gave it. I still can't explain it. Like when it comes to these reviews and these ratings, a lot of it is just like off of vibes, and like the vibe that I got from that book, like it just gave 3.5 stars. But anyways, I had a great reading month, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!